probably overlap some of the things you said, but it'll give you an opportunity to expand on them a bit. I want to start though, and I'll start with Andrea Lisenby, and we'll kind of take turns as to who goes first. What have you been told? You talked about the fact that you'd had many conversations, I think 100 conversations. What have you been told that persons want in a school board member?
People are looking for someone who's going to keep politics out of our schools. We've seen too much of an influence of political agendas coming in front of our school board, and I do believe our school boards tried their best to avoid it, but it's creeping into classrooms and whatnot. And we've also heard from teachers that they want to be supported. There's a lack of communication between administration and the actual schools themselves. So administration and teachers, administration and parents, and they would like to see increase in communication, increase in transparency.
Suzette Waters, same question to you. What have you been told that persons want in a school board member?
I've also had a lot of wonderful conversations with teachers and administrators and community leaders and the CPS Foundation. And what I'm hearing is that people want a board member who will listen. I've been very resistant to make any promises because I realize that as one of 7 board members, I alone can't do anything. And there's a lot of things that people would like to see changed that the board really doesn't even have control over, but a board member can always listen to someone's concern. And I think that's really important to listen. And then they want someone, they just say, we need somebody who's a leader. And to me, that means being honest, being willing to ask tough questions, and being willing to make decisions that are in the best interests of the students, even if they're not popular decisions.
Adam Burks, your answer to the question, what have you been told that persons wanted a school board member?
A lot of the feedback that I've received is people are wanting a strong leader that could come into the Columbia Public School Board and lead our education system to be the best that we could be. We are really struggling today for our board members to be those leaders, to give the vision and the direction to the superintendent so he knows the direction to take the school. There are lots and lots of communication issues, and our community has lost faith that they can communicate with the school board and get a response back. And I want to fill in that gap. I want to be able to repair those connections, because if we don't have the support of our community and we don't have the support of our taxpayers, the school board will not be effective and our students will not achieve. They will not be the great people that they're going to be.
I want to move then to pick up on especially one of the comments that was made about keeping politics out of the school board and trying to not be so divisive there. Let's go ahead and address one of the issues that I think is on the mind of a lot of people, and that's COVID and the response to that. And Suzette, we'll start with you on this particular one. One of the questions that came from the board, how are COVID decisions being made on the need for masking, and what is the current threshold that puts masking back into place, and how would you change the current decisions if you would at all? It's a general question. It's one of the questions I think that has been politicized. How do you think that you would deal with that as a member of the school board?
Sure. Well, I think there used to be some pretty set numbers that were used as metrics for determining whether or not we would be in seat, whether or not we would be wearing masks. And I don't know that there are specific metrics in place anymore. I was actually just speaking with Dr. Helen Porter yesterday about that, and to my understanding, there's not a specific threshold to like when are we going to close a building. I think it has been a very challenging task for the board to have to make decisions regarding COVID mitigation. I don't know that anyone on the board is a doctor or a scientist, and so, as board members, we have to rely on the advice of medical professionals to make medical decisions. I think we tried out not masking at school, and that didn't go very well. So I think if we need to wear masks for a while longer to be able to stay in seat, that doesn't bother me. I think that's fine. Hopefully we will not be talking about masks anymore this time next year.
I think you get a big amen from everybody on that one. Adam, let's come to you. How are COVID decisions being made for masking, and what is the current threshold that puts masking back into place, and how would you change the current decision? That's the question that we have.
I have been very lucky to lead our COVID-19 response and mitigation plan for our large employer. We have a little over 750 employees in our facilities. We have 4 facilities, we have 3 campuses with multiple facilities and multiple shifts. And we've been able to mitigate and control the COVID illness within our organization without masking. And it's looking at additional mitigation strategies. So it all starts with not just masking. It starts with looking at all the different mitigation strategies that are out there. It's listening to the healthcare professionals. It's working with our healthcare professionals. And we have had a very successful rate with a lot of our programs that we've had at Midway USA. And I will tell you, our biggest piece that we've been able to see in all of our data collection points that we've had is it starts with the employee screening process. It starts with not letting people sick who are at work. It's just like with any communicable disease. Most of the people don't know that they have COVID, or they may be asymptomatic. And we have to focus on the science. We have to focus on those programs and protocols that our medical professionals have given us. And by looking at that, we were able to do much more stringent employee screening. But basically, if you are not feeling well, you don't come in, and then you get a follow-up phone call from our human resources screening team. And we'll be able to put those screening processes in place, which has helped mitigate it. There are additional things that we could do. It's a very loaded question. The plan is over 400 pages long. So it's one piece of the plan. So I want everybody to focus on the entire plan rather than on one piece of that plan.
The one piece being masking, is that?
Absolutely, yes.
Andrea, same question to you, please.
Well, as a scientist, I can tell you that our science is always evolving. We have more studies pop up every day, and if you look hard enough, you can find a study to support this or that or the other. And when it comes to masking, I think what is most important for our community and for our schools is to communicate the thresholds that are set. As Suzette said at the beginning, we had this number, and we all would sit there and watch how many positive cases we had until we got to 50, and we knew that either we were, this is going to happen or that was going to happen. At least we had a reference point to work from. And I think that's where we need to go right now, is to pick a reference point and make that be our deciding factor. It seems very wishy-washy right now, and it can feel to the community that the board just kind of blows with the tide on that.
We're going to follow up with that because I think it's interesting. I know the number you're talking about because that was put into place, and I believe it was 50 per 14-day rate per 10,000. And we watched that very closely early on in the pandemic when we were setting guides and standards. The last few weeks, it's been 4 or 5 times that. And so we haven't done that. We haven't stuck to what was said maybe a year or so ago. So is it time to recalibrate or to ignore those and to go to some other guidance or standards? And so this is a follow-up. I don't care. You can take 30 or 60 seconds on this, or we can call it a new question if you want to. But Suzette, we'll start with you again as a follow-up.
I think we're comparing apples and oranges actually here, because the virus is mutating, it's behaving differently, it's infecting quicker, it's easier to get it, it's not as bad, but it's spreading faster. So trying to use the same metrics for an evolving virus is problematic. I think what the board and what administrators and what we're trying to figure out is how many people can be gone before we can't teach school anymore. So, we don't have the option right now to just tell everyone, if you don't have it very bad, you can come to school anyways, because if they test positive, they have to stay home. And if we don't have enough teachers to teach, then we have to close school. And so I think, I don't know what the number is of people that can be gone before we need to close, but if we can keep all of the numbers down and keep school going by masking, that seems to make sense to me.
How about the metrics that you would use to make some decisions to change the standard in classroom unmasked students and teacher?
I think it's a piece of the puzzle. So there's not one magic number in my book. As a safety and facilities manager, again, at a large organization where we're dealing with 700 plus people in buildings all across our campuses, we're looking at multiple things. And I don't think it's a magic number. if you look at the science and if you look at how this virus spreads, the N95 mask is truly the ultimate most protection. And if you keep reading through those studies, especially published by the CDC, masking is only effective when it's done continuously, which means at school and outside of school. And so when you pick and choose when the masking is going to work, that does not control the virus. The virus will evolve around all of that. So again, I go back to what is our entire mitigation strategy to keep our schools open, to keep our kids safe, and to keep our educators safe. And so I think masking may be a portion of that, but we have to look at how those masks are. What type of mask are they wearing? Are they wearing it properly? Are they keeping it on their face? Are they not touching their face? Are they washing their hands? So there's multiple pieces to this whole controlling of the virus other than just masking.
I want to ask you a follow-up because you mentioned screening that's being done at Midway USA. How is that done and how could that be implemented to a school district with 20,000?
Yeah, we use a lot of electronic software, and I believe if we had all the money in the world, that would be the best way of, but we look at 3 specific things. We're looking at any fever, we're looking at any contagious illness. So that's fever within the last 24 hours without the use of medications, so no ibuprofen or Tylenol. We're looking at any new shortness of breath, or have you been exposed to somebody who's been tested for COVID? And we ask for those people to stay home, not come to work, and then they call into our call-in line. From there, we're reassessing those call-ins. 7 days a week, we're talking with those folks, and we're looking at each individual case. We're not making a blanket statement. Some of those people return to work. Some of those people are putting in isolation. Some of those people are putting in quarantine. We're using all the science, but we're making a larger plan and not focusing on one thing.
There have been asymptomatic people who have had to stay home. Then.
Absolutely.
Andrea, your question, I'm sorry, I spent some time with Adam there, but I wanted clarification as to what he's doing at his job since he has that role. Your thoughts about where we are in regard to measuring and going off of there.
Sure. So our current policy is for kids to mask at school and our educators and our staff. And the CDC has come right out and said cloth masks provide negligible protection against the current coronavirus. If you talk to pediatricians and you talk to speech pathologists, they will tell you that children have a delayed development in language and reading when they are masked. I have a child who I put in private school this year because he's a kindergartner learning to read and he has a language delay. There are other families who can't afford to put their kids in private school, and the gap between the kids who are excelling and the kids who need extra help is growing. And I feel pretty strongly about looking out for the kids who can't catch up as quickly and don't have quite the support that other children have, and the masking is not helping them.
I'm going to ask a related question about what the pandemic has done to the schools in a moment, but if anybody in the audience has a question about masking or about this particular issue of dealing with COVID in the schools, please prepare to go to that microphone. So you're kind of, Andrea, right at the end there talking about the fact that what's it done over the last couple of school years to our students and what it's done to their success and their academic progress. So this is another question provided from board members. The last 2 years have been dominated by the pandemic response. The role of the school board is overseeing student learning. What is your vision for student achievement? I think maybe we can define the role of the school board in several different ways, but I do want to talk about student achievement. And I think Adam Burks, we'll start with you on this one.
Okay, so can you restate your question?
Yeah, I'm
really long question there.
curious about, I think numbers are showing that the pandemic has really hurt achievement. So where do we go to rebound from the hurt?
Absolutely, and we're seeing that here with our kids. I'm seeing it with my second grader. She entered second grade and was at a kindergarten reading level. And then when we started going back and looking at a lot of that data, everybody in that second grade group, first grade group are really struggling to read because we found out that distance or virtual learning was not effective. And so when we start looking at those metrics, we have a very short time frame as educators and parents to get those kids to the levels that they need to be before it becomes detrimental, where it's not recoverable. And I think that gets into your mitigation plan of how we need to keep our schools open and do the best that we can with the tools and resources that we have available. But I think we also need to go back and look at pre-pandemic and look at where our achievement is for CPS. CPS has some very bold visions and goals for our district, and then we're not meeting them. We have declining test scores year after year since 2015, before the pandemic, and we have no action plan to address those issues. And that is very concerning to me as a parent. What are we doing What is the school board doing to give that leadership and direction to our superintendent to correct these issues?
And Andrea Elizabeth, your answer to the question about how academic achievement has really suffered during the last couple of years and what we can do to turn that around.
We've never dealt with a pandemic before, and we made some mistakes as a district, and our test scores have suffered accordingly. Columbia has chosen to rank themselves among 13 comparable districts, and our ranking has decreased, as Adam said, but it's been back since 2016. We are below state standards in Columbia Public Schools. It is not just a pandemic issue. It is something that needs to be turned around. Things have not been done as well as they could have. You can point to different reasons for that, but as a school board, we need to increase academic rigor. We need to support our teachers in teaching reading, writing, math, science. We need to get some of the distractions out of the classroom that are preventing our teachers from doing their job, because they love teaching. They want to be there. They want to support kids. They're just facing too many distractions.
Suzette Waters, your answer?
You're
just a couple of, the last 2 years have really been hard. I mean, and we focused on those 2 years, and Andrea just broadened that out and said, and I think Adam would kind of agree with that maybe even prior to the pandemic, there have been some signs that there haven't been meeting certain academic standards that the school district would like them to meet. So again, I've just made the question really long again. But my question for you is basically, over the last couple of years in particular, how do we turn it around? How do we gain back what has been lost because of a pandemic?
That is a tough challenge. I talked to a second grade teacher a couple of weeks ago that said of her 19 students in second grade, 2 of them were reading on level. That's hard. And I'm sure it's not limited to elementary school. I'm sure I have a feeling it's more exacerbated at the elementary school level, because that's really critical developmental time. And virtual learning was not as beneficial to that student group. I think the teachers are going to need time. They need increased instructional minutes to help these kids catch up. So I know one thing the district has tried to do to help with that has been to push to the side new initiatives, new assessment plans, instead of having teachers do yet another new program chasing new data. We're like, okay, we're not going to do this. Just go ahead and teach. So we need to give these teachers the minutes of instruction they need to actually teach. And I think that will help.
That's kind of where I want to pick up for a follow-up, and we'll start with Adam Burks on this one. So I think at least 2, maybe all 3 of you, are talking about supporting teachers. What does supporting teachers look like in real practical terms?
So supporting teachers from a board member's perspective is giving them the tools and the resources that they need to do their job. And that could be in multiple different factors. Is that from a financial standpoint? Is that from more planning time? Is that from more recruitment and retention? There's multiple pieces to that. I believe it starts with recruitment and retention, recruiting the best educators, retaining those best educators so that we could fully staff CPS, so that we could have great substitutes, have great pools of that. Then going from there is making sure that we're continuously listening to our teachers, our educational staff, telling us what they need. If they need something to do their job, it should be the role of the board member to listen to that and then follow up with questions. How do we get that for you? What do you mean that you need this? Give me some more details. Is that candid two-way feedback, letting them know that we're here to support them. At the end of the day, if we're not supporting our kids, we are having a failing education system, and that's everybody's responsibility. The board members, the superintendent, the schools and staff, we just have to communicate. We have to know what those needs are.
Follow up to you, and then I'm going to ask the next 2 the same question and the same follow-up. Grade how the current school board is supporting teachers then, A to F.
Personally, I believe we have around a C and D. And I know that from experience by working with the teachers at Parkade, where our kids go to school. I know that with working with the teachers that our kids go to West Middle, is they all feel like they're being left in the dark and they're not being communicated to, they're not being listened to, and that's a problem.
Andrea Elizabeth, the first question is, what does it mean to support teachers?
That's a good question, and I like it. And I've asked lots of teachers that same question. You know, when you talk to teachers and say, hey, how's it going? Tell me about your year. They unload. And so we say, okay, well, how can we solve that? Like, what do you practically need right away to solve that problem? And immediately they all say, we need substitute teachers. CPS currently uses a private company to hire substitute teachers. And I actually went on the website to sign up to be a substitute teacher just to help out my kids' schools. And I got partway through the process and had to stop. It was so confusing, so complicated. I've talked to other parents who have tried the same thing, and there's just so many hoops to jump through. Not that that needs to be a roadblock, but it's difficult to get substitute teachers. That's an immediate threat that I think we can solve quickly by taking that on and doing it in-house. The second thing that teachers say that they need is help with discipline. We've had kids out of school for almost a year, and now we're expecting them to be back in school and in seat and to behave themselves, and they're not turning it back on like parents think and teachers think that they should. And they are asking for support in the area of discipline. They need alternatives for what they can do with disruptive behavior, and they're getting some guidelines quietly to let some things slide.
And your grade for the current school board and how it supports teachers?
I won't speak to it personally, but my feedback from talking to teachers is they would probably say somewhere around a C.
Okay. Suzette Waters, what's it mean to support teachers?
I think number one is we need to treat our teachers like the professionals they are. I think people will deal with a lot of difficult circumstances at their jobs if they feel they are appreciated and that they're doing a good job. So I think if we respect teachers for being professionals and doing their job well, we need to trust in their competence. That goes a long way. I think it helps for them to know that we know they're struggling and to acknowledge that. At Hickman, where I volunteer a lot, we've done what we call a teacher prize patrol. We blow up a couple of balloons, we get a little tiny thing of flowers, and we write a thank you note with a $20 bill, and we've been going around in the halls with, I might have a tambourine and a megaphone with those things, and popping into the classrooms and making a big ruckus and just celebrating them and telling them, we're doing this for teachers that are teaching extra sections, and we're telling them, we see you, we appreciate you, we know this is hard. And we've had several teachers break down in tears over $20. So that tells me they're worn out and they need a little appreciation. I have some things to say about subs, but my time is.
We can, I guess, come back to subs in a moment. What would you grade the current school board in supporting teachers?
That is a tricky question because I know some board members have tried to reach out to teachers, and then other board members don't feel it's appropriate to directly solicit feedback from teachers. So as a whole, I would probably say, I hate bad grades, so I'm gonna say B-.
You could have just said incomplete.
No, shut up. Take that.
We're a third of the way into our time with the school board members, and I've got other questions, but I'll stop right now. I see you are looking like you have one, so step right up to the mic.
Hello, I was just wondering, I think the best way to find out what the teachers need is to ask them. I think we need to develop a system to do that is anonymous. I think that it's real hard for teachers to tell people exactly what they think needs to be going on. I've heard of this anonymous surveys to teachers in other districts, and I think it sounds like a real good idea, and I was just wanting to know your guys' opinion on it.
We'll start with Andrea on this one.
I love it. Let's do it.
That's a pretty simple answer.
Yeah, and I like the idea of it being anonymous because a lot of teachers have commented that very quietly they fear retaliation from being honest about how they feel about things. So I love it.
Suzette Waters.
I've actually created surveys to seek feedback from teachers at Hickman, and it works. We've done it for PTA members and for teachers, and I love a good survey.
Madam Burks?
I love the idea of surveys, but I want to make sure that it's not just asking them what they need, that we have the tools and the resources to follow up that survey. Nothing would be a big dissatisfier to these teachers if we went out and asked them what they wanted and then turn around and did nothing with that data. So it needs to be a very systematic process. It needs to know, and it needs to have the support from the board of director, the board of education, and the superintendent and the leaders. And we have to make that commitment to our teachers that if we're going to ask them what we want, and we set some guidelines of what we can and what we may be able to put in the future budget of those requests, and then we need to follow back up with, this is the data that we got back, this is what we're able to do, these things are now in our long-range plan. So I think that is extreme key, is a very systematic process if you're going to ask people what they want.
I'm going to start with Suzette Waters on this one. It's kind of related to this. I have had conversations, which I didn't realize, with some school board members who say, as a school board member, you're representing a certain side. And so when negotiations occur for a teacher's contract, I've had some school board members say they feel a bit hampered in making perhaps these kinds of connections with teachers during, or maybe the whole year because of contract negotiations. I'll ask you, each of you, have you had a sense of that? Do you feel that that is something that becomes an issue for school board members when they are now maybe restricted in going into a school with a survey or asking directly, what can I do for you? What do you need?
I think it is that way. I think there is some like a feeling of like, is it inappropriate for me to talk to a teacher? But I don't think it needs to be that way. I don't think it should be that way. I know that collective bargaining, if that's what you're talking about right now, is happening right now. The board hires an outside lawyer to represent the board in that negotiation process. I am not going to say one thing or one way or the other about that. I mean, board members are not necessarily lawyers or the best people to do those negotiations, but I think it's not untoward for the board to seek the feedback or have relationships with teachers any more than it's untoward for the board to have relationships with people in the district. It should be a collaborative effort to, we all have a common goal here. It's almost like different parts of the body not working together. It's not going to work out very well. So I think there is room for just more of a presence.
Suzette has helped me kind of, I think, put this in better terms, but Adam, I'll come to you. So in the regards to collective bargaining and the impact that has on school board teacher relationship, what have you heard and what are your sensibilities about that?
From my understanding of how the process works is once collective bargaining begins, the school board members are not allowed to engage in any conversations with those teachers because it is a very systematic legal process that is bound by their contracts. But somebody proposed this to me as the other way a few days ago when I was talking to some community members is most of our teachers are community members and they're tax-paying citizens and they have kids that go to the school. And so they should still have that opportunity, just like any other citizen is, that could come and talk to that school board member and voice their concerns. And those might be the concerns that the school board may not be able to, the members may not be able to take direct action to, but we could always go back to the superintendent and say, hey, we're hearing a common theme from your staff and your educators. This is something you probably need to look in. Because at the end of the day, the school board members report to the community and the superintendent reports to the school board. That is the chain of command. And so if we get stuff back from the community and those are concerning comments, we have a duty to take those comments to the superintendent for him to investigate and to figure out if there is something truly wrong.
Andrea Elizabeth, same question to you.
Yeah, will you ask it one more time?
Sure. In regard to collective bargaining, it's sort of my attitude leading to this question is what Adam kind of just vocalized there, is that there are certain guidelines that are being followed now that may restrict a school board member from certain contact with teachers, especially during collective bargaining negotiation time. What have you heard in regard to that, and what are your feelings about that?
Well, we have a 4-page policy that explains collective bargaining for school board members. And so if the policy states you can't make contact, then you need to follow the policy and not make contact. Once that time frame is up, though, I think it's fair enough to listen to teachers and hear what they have to say. As everyone's described, there's a lawyer who goes on behalf of the school board to make the negotiations with the CMNEA, and then it kind of comes back to the school board for approval. And so outside of that time frame, I think it's great for school board members to listen to teachers.
All right, I'll look to the crowd. Anybody else have a question they want to ask right now? Again, I'm happy to plunge on forward, but happy also to give everybody an opportunity to answer a question. This is a question from the organizers of this event. Let's talk about bus driver shortages and what we can do about that and incentives. You talked about substitute teachers a bit. I think those are hard to find. Bus drivers, we've had the superintendent speak just a couple of months ago about how dire the need was for that. And I've lost track of who should go first with this, but I think it would be Adam. I'll start with you.
All right, it's just like with any staffing situation that you would have with a school board, with a public entity, or a private organization. When you outsource that service to a third-party agency, you lose a lot of that control and a lot of that input. It goes back to the substitute teachers, where we outsource that to a third party. I have been doing a little bit of research on how we could help work together with our community and our community partners. And there was a great story a few weeks ago of how Harrisburg Public School District and Hallsville School District is now combining their bus drivers. And so they're covering for each other. So they're actually working with their school partners. And why do we need to work against everybody? We are a community. We should be looking to our partner schools. We should be working together as a community to see how we could share resources, especially in this time and age when everybody is short of some type of worker. And I think if we could be able to build those relationships, it would make CPS even stronger than we are today, again, fulfilling that vision to be the best district in the state.
I'll follow up. So maybe a partnership with whom? Are you saying other school districts or other employers who might be able to say, we'll give you free time early in the morning, late in the afternoon to do this job while also doing your other job? I'm not sure.
Absolutely. It's working with the other schools, the schools that are maybe closed on Mondays that go to a 4-day work week. You have a pool of bus drivers that would be available to help cover shifts on Mondays. Maybe it's working with our local partners, our community. We have great resources in our community. Is it going out to large organizations and saying, hey, if you could support us, or would you be able to support us by sending us 5 substitute teachers a day from your work source? If it was our organization, maybe we say, we're going to give you 5, encourage our employees to go out, get certification, and we're going to give them 1 day off a week to go back and serve their community. Maybe it's working with large trucking companies who already have CDLs and saying, hey, on Mondays, would you be able to give us 5 people? Building partnerships and agreements with those people that are already here in town and try to serve all the needs of the community.
All right, Andrea, listen to me. What do we do about shortages of bus drivers?
Well, as you said, it's much like the substitute teacher shortage. It's something the program we used to have in-house, and then we outsourced it because we couldn't manage it in-house. There's school districts all over the country who have buses. I think we just reach out to other school districts and see what solutions work well for them. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel in Columbia. We can look to others for their ideas.
Suzette Waters?
I think, well, first of all, I think everyone's struggling with bus drivers. I don't think it's just Columbia. And I think I know the reason that we outsource both subs and buses to a third party is that we flat cannot afford to have a pool of substitutes in-house that is huge enough that would cover all of our needs, especially right now. We do have some buildings do have permanent subs, and we've utilized those, but we do not have the money in the budget to have paid subs just on tap. So that's why we've gone to a third party. It's so much less expensive. And they are able to manage it also. We have a human resources manager that is in charge of that at the district level, but if we had all those subs in-house, we would need more administrators too. I think we need to get creative with the buses. I like the idea of reaching out into the community to see if there are people that would be willing to do that on a day off. I'm sure there's training that would need to be involved. We have city buses in Columbia, and I know years ago we tried to partner with the city to do routes at the high schools, and there was a snag there, but that's something that could be brought up again. If we have if we have the drivers and we have the vehicles, they could certainly stop at a school.
This is a question that also has been part of your answers for a bit. Andrea, Elizabeth, we'll start with you. Some of the criticism currently towards the board and part of the administration is that they've been unresponsive to parents and constituents. And it has to do with communication between those groups. How would you communicate with those who seek your attention?
You know, I've thought a lot about this, and I've actually spoken to two of our current board members about this, because, you know, on one hand, if you're a board member and you're getting hundreds and hundreds of emails in, you can read them all, but it does take time to really give a thoughtful response. And a board member is a volunteer position, and they just don't have time to reply individually to all 100 emails that they get. What was your question?
How would you communicate with those who seek your attention?
Okay, so one thought that I've had is to host some type of group gathering. And I've kind of tried to think this out, but to where community members can come and we can discuss agenda items a few days. You know, you get the agenda on Thursday and the board meeting is on Monday. So if there were a way to have some type of event at a park or something on the Sunday before, to where you could discuss some of the controversial or more passionate topics with the community, and it would be open to anyone who wanted to come and give their feedback on different ideas. You know, speaking in a board meeting with your limited amount of time, and it's not available to have a back and forth communication, just hasn't seemed to be effective, and it hasn't seemed to be worthwhile.
Suzanne Waters, how would you communicate with those who seek your attention?
Well, I guess my email is going to be public if I win the election, so everyone's going to be able to email me, and I think that's a fine way to get in touch with a board member. But I don't think that's what people are looking for, because they can do that now, and that's not enough. I think communication through like PTAs would be one way that could be effective. Our PTA at Hickman, we've asked for sit-down meetings with a couple of board members, like one at a time, just to bounce ideas off of them and provide them with feedback after gathering concerns from our parents. And that's been really helpful. And I'd be up for doing that. And I like the idea of community, like kind of office hours, where people can come and give feedback on anything. I'm open to lots of communication ideas.
Adam Burke's your answer to the communication question.
Yeah, I think we've developed a culture where we don't meet people face to face, especially throughout this pandemic. And I think that has really hurt our communication tools and efforts that we've had as a community and as a district. And I think those are some of the things that we probably should consider bringing back, because at the end of the day, what is the root cause of all the emails? It's no communication, it's disgruntled or upset parents because they don't know what's going on. So if we could fix our communication stream, our communication methods upstream to prevent those emails by having some host of forums, to being a little bit more community oriented, being out in the community, working with the PTAs, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
I'm going to, this is kind of a related question, and we'll start with Andrea again on this one. I'm going to guess that you all have watched or been to school board meetings, and especially over the last year or two, and you know that there have been many who have stepped to their podium that is there for audience member response, and they've been very passionate. Sometimes they've been very angry. They have confronted the school board with accusations at times, and some of them had to do with, you're not responding to me, you're not listening to me. So that's the setup to this question. You're going to have to make, if you're a school board member, a yes or no decision. Masking, yes or no. This, yes or no. So how would you communicate with persons who are unhappy with your vote, yes or no? And they're going to keep on continuing to tell you they're unhappy, and they're going to continue to say, you're not communicating with me, which is code for, I don't like your decision, so you're wrong. Andrea, your answer.
Well, as a board member, you do vote yes or no, and then whatever the board, whatever the consensus is, all 7 members of the board stand behind that decision. If people are upset, they have every right to be upset, and they can vent and talk about it all they want.
Do you continue to communicate with them? I think I've sensed a sort of frustration, maybe with administrators and with school board members saying, look, we've answered the question. We can't answer it any other way. And so I think that leads to some saying, you're not communicating with me.
Have they answered the question?
They made a policy decision.
But had they explained the rationale behind their decisions? The public hasn't heard. And I've brought this up to some board members also, and they like the idea, is when they're discussing things at a board meeting, share your reasoning behind why you're voting yes or no on this or that issue, especially when it's one that draws a lot of public comment. Another idea is to communicate with an email after the board meeting, just letting people know here was our logic behind making this decision. It all goes back to the communication that Adam brought up. If you can get in front of things by explaining yourself and being very open and transparent about your decisions and your policies, you're not going to get a whole bunch of disgruntled parents that just keep beating a dead horse.
Suzanne Waters, same question for you.
I think there are some parents that confuse being listened to with being agreed with, and those are not the same thing. I think that's kind of what you were getting at. I expect, that's part of leadership, is just having to make a decision and stand behind it. Specifically on the masking, I think the board had to make a decision that they felt was going to be best for the students. And parents have strong feelings about this. Parents are going to have strong feelings about other things, but it's up to a leader to weigh the factors and on the balance, make a decision that is best for students, because that's what we're doing here. I agree that there can be some communication about, the factors that go into certain decisions, but I feel like in some cases, it wouldn't matter if they had a 90-page report on why they made a decision. People are still just not going to like it, and there's nothing you can do about that.
Adam Burke, same question to you. You have to vote one way or the other. You might be accepting communication up to that to help you make a decision. Then you make the decision. Some people unhappy with that are going to accuse you. You're not communicating. You didn't listen to me.
Yeah, I think it goes all the way back to the beginning of the communication process. We've got to get our community trust back. We have to get that piece that we've lost over the last few years, that face-to-face communication, letting them know that we care, and letting them know that we want to be as transparent as possible. It's what both of these ladies have said up here. We are not doing a really good job of telling us why. We're just telling it, this is how it's going to be. And to prevent those communication issues downstream, when people get so frustrated because they're not being communicated to over and over, or they're getting a canned response, it's the community that doesn't feel like the board is listening. All we feel like is we're getting a canned response to move on to the next email. So again, if we could get that communication out front first, let people know why these are the decisions being made, and talk to our community. Give that candid two-way communication. I want to meet with people in person. We could sit safely apart from each other if that is their willingness to do so. But talking over email and talking over face-to-face are two different ways of communication. And I think you're going to get more frustration over email because you can't have that candid two-way feedback right there at that time.
All right, sir.
Hi, my name is Brandon Rather, and I host a show on 93.9 Legal, but I'm also a taxpayer. And as we're talking about communication, I was kind of curious. There's another lawsuit after the school board voted. The board voted in December to do away with masks. The school board, or excuse me, school officials communicated to us, this is a waste of taxpayer money for us to have to fight this again. I'm wondering what your answers to this question would be. What do you think about that logic for the school officials to say it's a waste of money for us to fight this? You wouldn't have to spend that money to fight it if you would have abided by a school board vote.
Thank you.
Your response.
Suzanne Waters, we'll start with you on this. So in other words, Attorney General files a lawsuit. The school's printed response or stated response that came to us in the media and that everybody else available said that this was, I'm going to be paraphrasing it probably horribly, or was a waste of money, that we need to spend the money on education rather than on lawsuits and defending lawsuits.
I wish we didn't have to spend any money defending our decisions as a board. I think it was a frivolous lawsuit. I think it was a political move. I don't think it had anything to do with masking. I don't think it had anything to do with kids. I think it was a power move. And it is a waste of money to have to hire lawyers and get involved in a lawsuit like that. So.
Okay, Adam Burks?
I think it goes back with the mitigation plan of the organization of CPS. What is the risk assessment being conducted that would justify the mask? What is the risk assessment, long-term, short-term, all of that? And I think if the school board could justify what that risk assessment was, it's what's being done in any safety situation across the whole US as safety professionals. That's what we do. We weigh the risk of everything. We look at short-term risk, we look at long-term risk. And I think we're missing that piece. We are defaulting on, we're going to go with masks because it's what we feel comfortable with. It's what we feel safe with. And unfortunately, Andrea touched on this earlier, as a safety professional, I know that cloth masks and surgical masks are not as effective as respiratory protection if I see some people wearing some N95 masks and I see some people wearing some KN95 masks. If you don't wear those appropriately, those are still not going to protect you. So if we're truly going to do respiratory protection, then we need to do respiratory protection and go to that degree. But if you do it halfway with surgical masks or cloth masks that aren't washed on a regular basis, then it's really hard to defend those lawsuits because we haven't done the risk assessment upstream. And I think that's kind of where some of these lawsuits are coming, is where is your decision making, where are your facts, where are your statistics that say this is the right direction of the organization? And I haven't been able to find that either.
Andrea, listen to your reaction or response to the question about the school board and school district's response to the lawsuit by the Attorney General.
Yeah, I think we need to see how the lawsuit goes before we know anything. If it turns out the school was okay in making that policy, then of course it's a waste of money. But if it turns out we learn where some boundaries are drawn a little more clearly, then we have some answers to go off of.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a quick question. I'm going to move away from the COVID and the pandemic, and I'm going to look
Thank you.
broader about schools in general. Over the last several decades, I feel like our schools have been the catch-all to solve all of the other societal gaps. And we've gotten away from our primary mission, and that's teaching the kids. What's your response to that? And what would you propose that the schools do, and the school board can take a tremendous leadership role in controlling that scope creep, if you will?
All right, that's good. Adam Burks, you're first on this. 90 seconds should be plenty of time to solve this problem.
Yeah, I'm glad you have that confidence in me. I think it goes back with what is the strategic direction of the Columbia Public Schools. If you look at the current budget model, there are actually goals listed out to fix the issues that you're talking about. However, there's no goals or measurements or any visibility of where we're measuring that. And as we talked about earlier, since 2015, we've had a declining test scores year after year after year, and we haven't addressed those issues. And you're right, until we can fix those core items, we need to stop worrying about all the really cool things that we could be doing. We need to go back to the basics. We need to fix the foundation of the public school system here in Columbia, and from there we can build upon it and move forward.
Andrea Elizabeth, your answer?
Yes, will you ask me the question again?
His question was that the schools have started to become catch-all. They're dealing with a lot of societal problems now, in addition to teaching maybe reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's how I understood your question, basically, is it's just become kind of a catch pool for all of society's ills and problems. How do we deal with that? At schools, the reality is that seems to be what's happening.
So the Missouri state standards are for math, reading, science, and English, and we need to focus on those. That's why we test on them, and they have to be the priority, especially right now when we have lost so much ground due to the pandemic. And as you said, there are a lot of other things in our classrooms, and some of those are valuable. Kids learn more than just academics at school, but there's some of the things you might be referring to go back to the discipline challenges that our teachers are having. And if the teachers have solutions that they can use to handle the discipline issues, then they can get back to teaching. And that's what they want to do. We need to get things out of their way so that they can teach the core classes to help, bring kids back up to where they need to be.
Okay, Suzette Waters?
So just refreshing, you said, we're dealing with a lot of things that are not academic in school. We're having to, okay, so one thing that I would like to point out is that we don't get to choose who comes to us. We don't get to choose the kids that walk through the doors and ask us to educate them. They are coming to us from different circumstances. Some of them are walking in the door hungry. Some of them are walking in the door from the car they slept in or the hotel room they slept in. And so what we need to solve those peripheral problems are resources to deal with those other issues. Teachers are not necessarily trained to do all those things, but those things need to be done. So we need more resources for that. We need to empower adults to be good parents. I mean, parenting does not come with a manual, but there could be maybe some efforts to train parents in, what is a good breakfast to give your kids. Please turn off the TV by 9 o'clock. Make sure your kids go to bed. If kids come to school and they're hungry and they're tired, they're gonna struggle. So I think the key thing there is resources.
I want to follow up on that and pick up on what she was saying, and I can't see the person who asked that question right now, but I want to, because I think she was getting at kind of what you were concerned with, correct?
I think so.
Sort of. So I'll come back through to each of you again, because I think you are representative of three families. You are caring parents. You have demonstrated that in the fact that you have been active with your students. You're very caring of your students or your children who are students in the Columbia Public School District and elsewhere. And so you are way above average in what you do for making sure that your students have a good chance of success. But that's not everywhere. And so if I'm a teacher, I've got 20 students, 10 of them may be your students. 5 of them may be borderline, and some may be just there because they're there. And they haven't had any kind of preparation to be there about the importance of school or anything like that. So if that's the factor that we're wondering, how do you prepare them to learn? How do you prepare them to be at school and have the right mindset or body, mind, spirit, and soul to want to learn? Yeah.
I think it goes back to the tools and the resources that those teachers need to have an effective classroom. And those teachers should be able to feel comfortable enough to going to their leaders and their administrators of saying, hey, I have these issues in my classroom, I need some additional help. Does that mean where there's additional paras added to that classroom to help those students achieve? As a public school system, everybody has the opportunity to come here and everybody should have that opportunity. I am very fortunate, my wife is very fortunate where we are very active in our school, but we also know that there are parents that are not able to do that. I feel like my job as a board member is to be the voice for those parents, to tell them, to help give them the resources that they need.
Would you advocate more money then, a raise in taxes to pay for personnel that would help students?
I think we need to dig down into our budget. I've been going through it for the last several days. It's extremely long. There's lots of things in there, but I think we have some opportunity to make some improvements in the budget model, to work with what we have, to give the teachers the best resources that we can with the resources that we have today.
Andrea, Elizabeth, same question to you.
Yeah, just about the same answer. We need to equip our teachers and staff with resources for the situations that they're faced with. And not every elementary school is going to see the same thing. Not every high school is going to see the same thing. And so on a school by school basis, we need to give our teachers exactly what they need to handle their situations.
Suzette Waters?
So I think what your original question was, how do we prepare these kids to learn who are coming to us?
Yeah, you talked about the diversity of background to those students
Right.
that'll be in the same classroom.
I can speak to this a little bit from one of my volunteer experiences. In 2019, the winter semester, I volunteered at West Middle School in a 7th grade social studies classroom, at least twice a week, sometimes 4 times a week, in 2 different periods. So, twice 2 periods. And I was helping the teachers, upon being asked, because she had such a wide range of ability in her classroom. She had students that were high achievers, she had students that were right on target, and then she had students that were really struggling. And I took either individuals or a small group out into the hall, and I would just go over and over and over the lessons with them. We'd read magazine articles, we looked at, I would help them with map skills, you know, where's the Rhine River, where's the Alps, Europe is a separate continent, all these things. And they were not the kids that came bounding into school excited to be there. They were, you know, some of them were kind of downtrodden kids. Some of them missed a lot of school because they had parents that worked nights and slept through and didn't get them to school, so they missed class. I had a student that was living in a hotel room with her entire family and 2 dogs. These kids had needs, but what I discovered was that with a little bit of work, they got it. They would retake the test, they'd get 100%, there was some ability there. What they didn't know is that they had something in them that could do it. And so I think one thing we need to do is always be mindful that every student that walks through that door comes with greatness in them.
All right, we'll go to the question.
Yes, I was going to ask if you are wanting police officers in schools, and if so, I want to know what the rationale is for either you do or you don't.
Andrea Lisenby, we'll start with you. That's a good question. It's a timely one because there is the discussion again about school resource officers.
Yes, absolutely. Teachers are asking for them, parents are asking for them. Yes.
Suzette Waters?
The board did just vote to approve that contract on at the work session last Thursday, and now I believe it goes to the city. So the administrators and teachers I have talked to are largely in favor of the school resource officers. They are going to be required to have de-escalation training and other school-provided training because the correct sense is that not all police officers can be school resource officers. It takes a different, it's not policing, it's not meant to be policing, it's meant to be mentoring. And that is a big difference. So I know some parents had I don't know if their parents or their community members had concerns about the data of the interaction between students and the SROs, and I think that's valid. That contract stipulates that those interactions will have to be quantified, and there will be an annual presentation so that we know how many kids are being arrested, or what are they being arrested for, or what interactions are happening there. But I think the intent is good, and if they're used the right way as a resource and mentor, then I think it's helpful.
Adam Burks?
Yes, I strongly agree with school resource officers being in our public school system. When I was going through high school, actually middle school and high school in Harrisburg, that's where I went to school at, we had a school, it was one of the first school resource programs. Most of us know it as DARE, but that's truly what that program was. And that's when I decided that I wanted to be a police officer in my life, was the relationship that I built with that police officer. They taught me many life skills. We were able to build relationships, just like what these ladies are saying up here. It does take a special person to be in that role, and it's very critical that we put that right person in that role. Unfortunately, when I got out of school and I went to be a cop for a few months, it was not what it was like on TV, and it was not like what you saw everywhere else, and I chose that was not the right path for me. But I remember all those interactions, and I think what grew my love in serving my community. That's where I really got tied in with the fire district. Was those relationships that I built with those police officers. Harrisburg was a very small town at that time, and that's what we had as a community, is we had that resource. So I think it could do great things for Columbia Public Schools. I think there needs to be lots of monitoring. I think we need to be able to measure and monitor and quantify that data to make sure that it is going in down the right path.
All right.
Good evening. Want to share a couple of data points. So suicide is the second leading cause of death between the ages of 10 and 24. And in schools, by the time an individual is diagnosed with a mental health condition till the time that they receive treatment is generally 5 to 8 years based on national statistics. Question I have for you is, if you were a school board member, how would you advocate for students that might have a mental health condition within the walls of the school?
Adam Burks, you're first.
Well, I think it comes with equipping our teachers with the resources to help identify that. So as a school board candidate, I think we have a responsibility to give those teachers the tools and resources to do their job. It's a toolbox, and we're always adding to it, and we're making things better. And we want to be able to let those teachers know, if you see signs, you need to let somebody know, and we need to work with our community partners on helping identifying that and getting those resources. Boone County has amazing resources. I don't know if anybody's ever lived anywhere else, but I could tell you from the public safety world, when I look at our surrounding communities, they don't have what we have. We need to build partnerships and relationships with these community partners. We have 2 major healthcare systems in our town. We have all these great resources. We have all that stuff. I think we could do better with our toolbox for our teachers and let them know the resources that we could help manage for them.
Andrea Lisby, your next question about dealing with the mental health problems of young people in our schools.
I honestly don't know enough about it to answer that question, but I would like to look into it and get back to you.
Suzette Waters?
I think it is important to address mental health, for sure. We have homeschool communicators in each school, and we have counselors. I know the district is working on relationships or has a relationship with Burrell Behavioral Health. That's one thing that when I was talking to the assistant superintendent for elementary, he specifically said, we're trying to develop these relationships with a place like Burrell Behavioral Health, and we're getting bogged down in masking. So we're having to troubleshoot instead of spending our time developing these critical long-term solutions for another issue. I spoke with the principal of Battle High School, and they have some significant needs, and he suggested using grant money, all these mental health service places have grants available to provide services. There are mental health specialists within the schools, but they might not be able to catch everything, and they might not be able to treat everything quickly enough. So I think that warrants further work.
Okay.
Well, my name is Matt Gass. I'm the president of Burrell Behavioral Health.
So please explain it.
Well, so there was at the last work group, there was an MOU signed to support Battle. So my question was really just getting into sort of your familiarity with accessing mental health services, tying into some of the comments that you all have made around community partnerships, and then ultimately just extending some support that, as a designated mental health agent, we can meet the majority of the outpatient therapy and psychiatry needs.
So you want anything else from them? I think you do.
I want to say thank you and wish you all the best of luck. This is a really exciting opportunity to grow things in our district.
And you all have almost survived your first form. Trust me, by the end of March, you'll be giving each other's answers probably. I've got a couple other questions though to bring it down the home stretch. One is starting kind of a simple type question. And let's see, did I start with Andrea on that one? I think I started with Adam actually. So Andrea, listen, you'll be first on this. Why seek a job that is so demanding as a volunteer and such a divisive time?
Yep, that's a good question. Well, yeah, I have a long answer to this, but the short version is that serving on the school board has been on my mind for a long time. As I said earlier, we have the full broad spectrum of children in our house. And I believe that I have been involved enough in all the different classrooms to learn enough about the special education program, the EEE program, typical children in a classroom program, the PTAs, the school buses, the substitute teachers, to where I want to bring that knowledge to serve my community. It's something that is a passion of mine to serve, and I've been doing it more on a individual school level, and that's been enjoyable. And I'm excited to use more of my leadership skills and small business owner skills to benefit our community. And you ask why now when it's so unpopular, right? Our last child just went to kindergarten, and I'm free to do it. And I said earlier also, it really bothers me that politics are just creeping into things, and I believe they need to stay out of our school. And that's the driving force that got me to sign in this year.
Suzette Waters, same question to you.
Please ask it one
Sure.
more time,
Why
because I
seek
had
a-
it in my brain until I.
Why seek a job? I'm not sure this is doing anything right now, so I'll just speak loud. Why seek a job that is a volunteer job that is so demanding in such a divisive time?
Yeah. Well, a little secret, volunteering is my superpower. I can't say no. So I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, but every year since 2008, I've been in every building my kids have been in, on the ground, room parent, concessions worker, PTA treasurer, carnival operator, and that's just what I do. Why particularly now? Because public school is the foundation of a successful community, and it must succeed. And that sounds like hyperbole, perhaps, but I feel a sense of urgency to defend public school right now. I think public school matters. I think it is the only way we are going to educate all of the children in our community well. And it is important enough to me to spend my January having meetings and filling out index cards and not sleeping, because it's so critical that we do what we can to educate every child in a free and in a quality way.
Adam Burks, your answer.
Like I said earlier in my opening statement, I am at a position in my career where I've always wanted to do this, and I feel like with my leadership and organizational skills and skills that I've learned working for a very respected community, or a business in the community, where I could bring that business skill set, that leadership skill set to an organization that I could see that's kind of struggling from the outside. And I just want to help make Columbia Public Schools to be really one of the great education systems here in the state of Missouri.
James Gray.
Not a sermon now, James.
Well, you'll get one because you got ready to retire. I'm sitting around and I'm looking around the room, and I see a lot more reporters here than I do parents. And, I've sat in my car and I listened to a lot of what you all was saying. My kid at this school, even, I took my kid out of public school because they having a learning thing, which, from the day that I went to public school, I was also having a learning issue also. Pandemic, we talked about that. None of us are really true science, and you got all of these doctors saying this and saying this and you saying this. And then I heard we talked about mental illness, and personal speaking, I'm one of the craziest persons you ever want to meet. So to me, we all got mental health issues, especially dealing with
James, don't put the clock on you.
pandemic. Okay. And then we got the politicians. Hell, we need to sue them, because politicians and politics is nowhere for our school. And one of the guys that's making a big stink out of it, his wife worked for our school system. And then I got a lot of my board members who are been threatened, scared, and all of this because we want to run things. And then I look at my kids at Hickman who walked out because they said, we want to wear a mask, we want to be safe. Not once have we really ever in the last 4 or 5 years addressed what our kids really need. And to listen to our kids also. I'm in the schools, I hear my teachers. I just did a visual for a young man that got killed. Where are my school board members then? What's going on now? We got issue, you brought up battle. When we have resource officers at Battle, our schools strived out there to do a lot better because they got involved with the kid and they got to know them personally. Then my last thing, we bring in superintendent. Every time we bring in the superintendent, and for him to even sell his program, and even for him to understand this city and our school system, we always get backlashes. You get 2 or 3 board members that says he wants to do it the wrong way. Well, and I'm going to tell you all, if you are elected, and if you all are elected, it ain't about you all. It's about every single kid in our school system.
All right. Is that it?
For you it is. I'll speak to a couple
For you
of
it is.
them.
I still get to talk. If there's a reaction, I'll let you give a reaction before we get into our final 10 minutes. Suzette, we'll start with you.
I agree. Serving on the school board is not about the board member. It's not about certainly not about the fame and fortune. It is about the kids. It is about preserving public school for the kids because that is how they're going to learn. And so I think, and that goes back to what I was saying about being a leader. A board member has to be a leader and be able to cut through the noise and weigh the factors and make a decision that is best for the kids, even if it's not the popular decision.
Adam Burks.
I think, I can speak for myself, but when we get up here and we talk about our personal experiences, we talk about some of the frustrations that we know that our community is having. And I think that we're to a point where we feel like, or I feel like I could step up and help be that voice for our community. So I don't want you to ever think that when we get up here or I get up here and talk about my kids, I'm trying to make the connection of that I have relationships, I have strong relationships with my school district, and I have a strong passion to serve my community. And so taking all of that in and making sure that we could do the best across all schools in the Columbia Public School District. The role of the board member is to lead the district and to provide that vision and provide that strategic plan. And we need people like you in the community to make sure that we don't forget that. And that's one of my goals. If I ever get elected as a school board member, is I cannot forget that this is about everybody. It's not about my personal experiences. It's to prevent any of those from occurring again to any other kid that has a parent that is not in the position to be as vocal as I am, to be in the position to serve my community.
Andrea Lisenby.
You said students come first, and I think all 3 of us agree 100% that that's accurate, and that's what we all believe. And our school district has somehow lost sight of that a little bit and lost our way. The pandemic kind of accelerated that, and so I'm excited for us to get back in seat and to get back to meeting each and every child wherever he or she is, and help bring them along and catch them up and make up that ground that we've lost. We need to bring back accountability into our classrooms. Our children are missing that, and that's part of living in the real world, is understanding accountability, and we need to be teaching that in our classrooms also.
I have one final question, and then you'll each have 60 seconds to say whatever you want in a closing statement. Adam, I'll start with you on this one. So let's say you're at a statewide school board member training event, and somebody comes up to you and finds out that you're from the Columbia Public School District. What do you think that they think?
Well, hopefully, when they look to a member that walks in from the Columbia Public School District, they're like, oh, that's such and such from the Columbia Public School District. We can learn a lot from them. And I think as a school board member, when we go to those events, it's knowledge sharing, it's building those relationships, it's building those partnerships, because at the end of the day, the public school system serves everybody in the state.
Andrea, what do you think they think when they say, oh, Andrea Lisenby, she's with the Columbia Public School District Board of Education?
Well, there's probably a lot of rumors that they think, and the Attorney General letter is probably on the top of their mind, but we are the 5th largest district in the state of Missouri, and we have a large public school system that we oversee. And so I do hope that we can be a resource to other school districts and, collaborating with them, on substitute teacher ideas and busing ideas, and we can all work together.
Hi, I'm Suzette Waters. I'm from the Columbia Public School District. What do they think?
I don't really care what they think. Of course I care what they think. They probably think, wow, you guys have been through a lot, and you guys have been in the news a lot, and, you know, it is what it is. But I hope what it is about is, wow, you guys worked really hard, and you got that, you know, all that learning caught up, and you were really supportive to your teachers, and you saved public school from the angry mob.
Closing statements, 60 seconds. We're going to start from Suzette and work back this way.
So I'm here because I believe in this place. I've grown up here. These schools are the ones I went to, and they are the ones that nurtured my kids. I don't just believe in Columbia as a community. I believe in Columbia Public Schools as our best option to educate our kids. That's not saying we can't do better. That's saying we will do better, and we will only do better if we can talk to each other, we can respect each other, and we can roll our sleeves up and get to work.
Andrea?
It's important to have board members who believe in a strong and vibrant public education system, and I do, and that's why I'm running for the school board. Our educational system was harmed by the pandemic, and we have a lot of ground to make up. We need to focus on reading, writing, math, and science. We need strong, accountable leaders at the helm. It's the school board's duty to prepare our kids for high school. It's our responsibility to teach and listen to parents in the community. And we will make the Columbia Public Schools the best and the brightest, not only in the state, but also in the country.
And Adam?
Like I've said all night, I have a passion to serve my community. As a member with the Boone County Fire Protection District, I have learned so many valuable skills of working with our community partners, working within the schools, working with kids. My wife and I believe in our public education and putting our students first. And we need parents like us that are willing to step up and to help make sure that we can carry that vision on for every student that attends Columbia Public Schools. I want to make sure that I am the voice for the students, the parents, and the staff for the Columbia Public School System. We have to be their voice, we have to be their leaders, and we have to move forward making this the best school district in the state.
Adam Burks, Andrea Lisenby, Suzette Waters, thank you very much. Folks, school board candidates. So they're on the ballot April 5th. There will be 4 names. You get to vote for 2 if you're a voter in the Columbia School Board District. Again, Lake Willoughby was not able to be